Hello everyone, this is Justin, Taming Type 1, and this is part 4 of my series on affording type 1 diabetes without breaking the bank, without insurance even. You can afford diabetes without much issue. You can get insulin pretty cheap, you just gotta know how to do it. In this part 4, we're going to go over NPH insulin. In the previous one, we went over our insulin. These are both Walmart insulins. They're very cheap, very affordable, and very accessible. And you can use them, but they work differently. You just need to know how to use them. Before I get started though, be sure to understand that I'm not a doctor. I'm not giving you medical advice by giving you this information. I'm just providing information on how NPH works. And if you want to try it, you should probably consult your doctor first. Don't rely on just me alone, right? Do your research. And also, this video is meant to be centered on the United States, although the ideas in here can be used around the world. I'm not sure how available and accessible NPH is outside the States. You just have to look into that part yourself. Anyways, let's get started. So first, what is NPH insulin? NPH stands for neutral protamine hydrocodone. I don't know what that means. I don't care. Who cares, right? It's been around for a long time, just like our insulin has, since around the 1970s. And again, because it's so old, the patents are expired, and now it's able to be made very cheaply by Walmart's Rely On brand. Now, just like with our insulin though, that cheapness comes with a catch. NPH is not a long-acting insulin like Lantus or Levemir or Tresiba. Instead, it is known as an intermediate acting insulin, meaning it doesn't last as long. And you gotta keep that in mind when you use it. That means you're gonna have to dose it a little bit differently than these longer acting insulins. And one thing else I'd like to note is that if you get a vial of NPH, you might notice it's cloudy, kind of milky, honestly. Well, don't worry, it's not bad. NPH is cloudy by default, and whenever you use it, you need to gently roll it between your hands like this. Just roll it a little bit to mix before you inject yourself with any of it. Now, why would you want to use NPH? Of course, just like with our insulin, it's because it's very affordable and very accessible. In most states, you don't need a prescription, you don't need insurance. You can just walk right into a Walmart, over the counter, and get it for $25 a vial. Very easy, very effective. It's available at any Walmart pharmacy, so you can just find it anywhere in the United States. The only problem with NPH, unlike our insulin, which I actually do prefer to use, the problem with NPH is that it's not very convenient. It's not very convenient because it doesn't last as long as other insulins. But that said, it can still do the job. It certainly still beats not having any insulin at all. And you can still manage diabetes just fine with NPH, you just need to know how. I remember for 6 months, despite having insulin I just wanted to try, I used only R and NPH. Saved a lot of money on insulin, had nothing that needed insurance, and I was saving a ton of money doing this. And despite some ups and downs, it wasn't perfect. I was still able to get my A1C down to 5.7 using NPH. I mean, that's pretty effective, don't you think? So yeah, you can use NPH effectively. You just need to understand how it works. And that's what we're going to talk about here. First thing to understand with NPH, the most important thing, is that NPH does not last as long as other long-acting insulins. And worse yet, it has a peak. You might notice with other insulins, like Tresiba, you take it and it's very flat for 12 hours, 24 hours, 48 hours, who knows. NPH, on the other hand, is not like that at all. Just to show a graph here, talking about what we showed this one before too, you notice the black line is the NPH insulin. This has a peak and only lasts maybe about 15 to 20 hours max, while longer-acting insulins like Lantus, insulin glargine, insulin detemir last up to 24 hours, and they're much flatter. This makes a difference when you want to figure out how to dose for it. With NPH, you need to notice that its effects start trending downwards, not at 24 hours, but at 8 hours, and you need to keep that in mind when you use it. Now, how do we solve this peak problem? Because obviously, if you just take NPH once or twice, like you do with other long-acting insulins, you're going to have to deal with that peak, and you're going to end up going low, real low at one point of the day, and then another point you're going to be really high. You don't want that. You want to try to keep it as flat as possible. So how do we solve for that peak? The best way to solve for it is to just dose it multiple times a day. You need to split that basal dose. What I recommend is you dose at least 3 times a day with NPH, because that way you take 3 little doses instead of 1 big dose. Those peaks are going to line up, and it's going to end up looking much flatter. I'll give you a visual of that in a second. But before that, let me just give you an example. So let's say right now you're taking 21 units of your basal. You can instead split that into 7-unit doses every 8 hours for NPH. Now that's not going to be exact, because NPH actually is not might not be as potent as another insulin too. They have different strengths, right? They have different strengths. You want to keep that in mind as well. Same with our insulin. So you might need to change those numbers up or down, but that's the basic idea, is you want to split it 3 ways. Now let's just give a visual of what I'm talking about here. So here's 1 dose of NPH. Obviously that's not going to fly for a whole day. You're going to be low after about 6 hours, and you're going to be high after about 15. You don't want that. Let's say we do 2. A little bit better, but there's still going to be a time where you're going too high and a time where you're going too low. Alright? But what about 3? Suddenly, this is actually looking pretty good, right? Because what you notice here is that the effect is a lot more flatter than before. Now it goes up and down a little bit. It's not perfect, but it's much better. And what I also want you to notice is that there's overlap between the peaks, between the hills. That overlap means there's extra insulin running, and you can sort of add that to where the peaks are, and it actually starts to level out a little bit more. So 3 doses a day can actually work very well with NPH, and a lot of people have done that for a long time. It used to be the number 1 insulin people used back in the day. It's possible. You just gotta know how. Now, if you want to be a real veteran, you could try 4 a day, but at that point, as you notice, there's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of overlap here. So that might hinder things a little bit, might introduce a lot of trouble, and plus, that means you're going to have to dose sometime when you are trying to sleep. Like at least with the 8-hour dosing, you could dose it right before you go to bed, sleep 8 hours, dose it right when you get up, and then dose it 8 hours after you get up. But if you do it 6 hours, 4 times a day, there's probably going to be time, unless you only sleep 6 hours, or you're going to have to get up, you're going to have to dose, and you're going to go back to sleep. And that's not very fun. So I prefer doing 3 hours. As you can see, it's still pretty effective, right? Alright, so the key to fixing that dose is to take it multiple times a day. Now, other tips for using NPH is you might want to consider how you eat when you use NPH. Now, you don't have to necessarily go low carb to use NPH. You can do it however you want, but you might want to change your timing of your meals to match the dosing of the NPH. Because let's say you eat when NPH is going to be at its peak, you might be able to avoid going low then. Likewise, if you don't eat when NPH is at its lowest, you might avoid going too high. You see what I'm saying? You can time your meals effectively to match those peaks and keep your blood sugar even better. Now, it's not essential, but do keep that option in mind. And just like with our insulin, you need to test your blood sugar constantly and adjust accordingly. And in fact, one thing I definitely recommend you do, and I recommend this with our insulin too, I recommend you carry glucose tabs on hand at all times. All times. Every day, no matter where you go, carry glucose tabs or some form of sugar on hand, because you never know, especially when you're trying a new medicine, whatever it is, you never know when you might dose too much, and you need to be able to have some sugar on it to take care of that. You need to be able to test to know that you're going too low. Likewise, you need to be able to test when you're going too high. It's going to be a little bit different, right? So you probably won't get the dosing right the first time or even the first few times. But if you test constantly, if you do your due diligence, if you dose multiple times a day, at least every 8 hours, you'll be able to make it work for you just fine. And again, you want to roll the vial, because it's cloudy, it's a bit of a mix. Kind of like salad dressing. You want to roll it gently to mix before you stick your syringe in it and you use it. Now, key points. NPH doesn't last as long as other insulins, and it has a peak that you need to account for. You should dose at least 3 times a day, and be sure to check your blood sugar constantly. Keep glucose tabs on hand. Now, next, I don't know if you noticed I mentioned syringes. We're going to get into syringes. We're going to talk about how you can get syringes, spoiler alert, from Walmart or other places, and you can also maybe try to get insulin pens if syringes aren't your thing. Be sure to check that video out when it comes out. For now, be sure to like this video, share it around if you found it very useful, share it with any diabetics you know, and follow me on my social media, TameType1, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and so on. Next time we're going to go over syringes. I'll see you there.